Hello, welcome. My name's Adam Dahlgren from Allstacks, and I'm really excited that you are all joining us for our Value Stream Trends webcast. And I'm really pleased to be joined by the esteemed Chris Kondo of Forrester and Natalia Baryshnikova of Atlassian. Pretty awesome panel today. We're going to kind of go through some trends, some movement in the market around value stream, have a dialogue more than a presentation. And I want to start by introducing our guests. So first, Chris Kondo. Hello, Chris.
Hey, Adam. Thanks very much for having me today. It's a real pleasure.
We're thrilled that you're here. Chris, you want to just give a little quick background on yourself?
Absolutely. So I'm Chris Kondo, principal analyst at Forrester. I've been with a Forrester analyst for 6 years. Previous to that, I was in software development for 30 years, notably at Microsoft. Where a lot of my opinionation about, gathering metrics and software performance, and really kind of the kernel of where I started thinking about when I think back to, my experience and bring it into this whole body of research on value stream management. I see them all very relatable, and I'm really glad to be talking to you about it today.
We really do appreciate you coming to chat, and let's bring in Natalia as well to say hi. Hi, Natalia.
Hey, how's it going? I'm Natalia Baryshnikova. I'm with Atlassian, like Adam said. I'm a general manager and head of product for Enterprise Agility business unit at Atlassian that works with some of the largest organizations in the world to help them be more agile. And we use tools like Jira Align to help companies to drive more value and agility. Very excited to join you all. Thank you for having me.
Oh, we're thrilled to have you as well. So, little housekeeping for everyone watching. With our webcasts, we do really like to lean on the comments section. We're not going to go like just some presentation style all the way through. We'll be ping-ponging amongst the panelists. We really do hope that we'll have people say, "Hey, I think that was stupid. I didn't like that," or I see it differently, and we'll just hit that on the head, on the fly. That's how we like to do things. So please do take advantage of the comments. We will leave time afterward for extra Q&A beyond our sort of regularly programmed schedule here. And why don't we, just to get things framed out, what on earth is this value stream thing? Why are we even here to talk? Chris, you want to frame us out first, and then we'll kick it off from there.
Let's do it. Let's just jump right into it. Let's jump right into the fire. Today's webinar is 5 VSM trends to better your software delivery, right? So next slide, we'll talk about, sort of frame the whole thing that's going on. So, value stream management for about 4 years has been a really nascent kind of tool category. People were trying to put their label on what is it? Is it DevOps? Is it something with business? Value streams doesn't sound like an engineering thing. But let me tell you something, coming from a person who had been an engineering team lead at Microsoft, understanding the metrics that your team is operating under, the quantitative data of release cycles, build times, quality of products being delivered, release cycle time, and then also the impact of what you're delivering are really important to companies that think about software as a product versus just software as a project that has a beginning and an end and you ship it and you're done with it. That whole methodology and way of thinking about software is going right out the window. And people are realizing that software is a living, breathing component, and it's also a critical business capability to their business in order to assure survival and competitiveness. It's not just a nice to have a website or an e-commerce site. It's a must-have these days. And so what does value stream management do? It doesn't replace DevOps. It complements DevOps. It allows you to map the value that's flowing through all of your DevOps tools. It visualizes all that data, kind of brings it together and gives you that kind of single overview of what's happening across different tool chains, allows you to measure in a quantitative way the various metrics that you want to judge efficiency and productivity and impact by. And it also, surprisingly, allows you, because it has all these connections to all the tools, it also is a very convenient place to add governance, where you can put rules in place that says, hey, if something hasn't quite met the quality standards or the right people aren't working on these things, maybe we can ask for further review. Maybe we can slow down the release cycle. So we really see a lot of interesting activity happening in value streams and value stream solution market. It's gone from a nascent tool system to one that's really becoming critical to all of the people that have adopted this technology. And really, the idea is to get things from idea to delivery and map out that business value flow. I'm not going to read this definition. I think I've explained it pretty well. But thank you very much, Adam, for letting us talk about it today.
Yeah, of course. And also bit of a thrill for us to be able to have one of the people who actually made up the words value stream management at whatever point it was.
I'll admit it felt like a bean counter kind of thing to do. And I'm like, all right, well, but this is what the history of this kind of science is, right? It goes all the way back to Toyota, manufacturing, just in time. And we're just taking that professional approach and applying it to software delivery. And it seemed like the right terminology for this particular aspect of software delivery. So thank you.
Yeah, I also love to hit on the notion of, it's not a replacement of some DevOps initiative. This is a sort of logical progression toward understanding the data, the value actually being delivered more comprehensively. I like to say it's like a 360-degree composite of the sort of meta system that is your organization.
Exactly.
So why don't we want to talk through the 5 trends and then leave room for some Q&A. Trend number 1 is really just getting your arms around risk, and maybe worth framing how, like, at what level we're really talking about risk. This does obviously have a sort of software delivery, software operations backdrop, which is an important note here, vis-a-vis value stream management. And Chris, like, I think most people are probably firstly interested to know what are these CIOs and CTOs saying in this new year of 2023 about, hey, what's risky, what's different, what are they trying to do about that?
Yeah, what's risky is going out of business. What's risky is not meeting your deadlines, not slow innovation time, slow time to market, not going fast enough, having to do more with less. Things like that. Those are the themes of 2023, or having to do more with what you have. And this has always been the value stream management mantra. People think about risk and they always think in terms of security, but there's risk of missing your market window. There's risk of not being aligned with the other teams. There's risk of not getting the right features out the door because you're not measuring the impact. And so value stream management is really oriented towards thinking about software development, not just as like a work item that needs to be completed and you check it off, but something that you're delivering to the customer to deliver some sort of impact, and then measuring whether or not you did it in an efficient way, and then measuring whether or not it actually delivered the intended value. And risk really is not paying attention to those things. And that's how you get a lot of risk, business risk, I would say, and where VSM can kind of intercept and really help out.
So Natalia, you guys at Atlassian, your products like have some of the biggest companies in the world, right, as customers and users. At that scale, this risk concept is obviously acute and hard. And what are your core power users, key buyers? What are they telling you about how they're approaching the reducing of risk within the software life cycle for this year?
Yeah, great question. I think that initially you mentioned what do CIOs and CTOs think about risk? I would add to that conversation CFOs. And value stream management, in what I'm seeing, really helps software delivery organizations to be truly a partner in business. They have always been, right? Software delivery drives value to organizations. I think that's a given. But having a dialogue and a shared understanding of value that is understood by software delivery teams and by the business side of the teams is hugely important. And the way we are seeing the concept of risk evolving is very similar to what Chris was talking about in terms of it's no longer security risk. It's about doing the right thing, do it quickly enough. And the way value stream management is leveraged in those conversations, and what I'm seeing from top software powerhouses of the world. And when I say top software powerhouses, I don't necessarily mean tech companies, because everyone is in tech these days, right? All organizations have a software delivery teams these days. But in order for them to drive value, they first need to align on what value means, not just for those teams, but also to the business. And then identify things like bottlenecks that, if left unattended, can pose a risk to delivering value to customers, and therefore have a risk for the business of missing the mark on revenue targets, missing the mark on customer expectations. So that's what the most innovative customers that I'm speaking with are thinking about. And more often than not, I see business leaders participating in those conversations, right? So seeing CFOs talking about software deliveries is a trend that I'm seeing, because like both of you said, this is the time where missing the mark on software delivery results in drastic impact on the business.
Yeah, I think that's so poignant, right? The market backdrop is shaky for lots of orgs. So what do they need to do? They need to focus. The focus basically shines a light on your big, key, expensive, in many cases, software organization. And now you have all these different stakeholders really looking closely to say, what's coming? Is it what I've expected? Is it going to be on time? Are we efficient in doing this? And what's cool is, like, the types of tools that we build and the types of things that Chris likes to talk about, they've been sort of primed and waiting for this moment of more focus on this topic, because it's sort of a new era of what data is available and what you can do with it. We could talk on this one long time.
we could
Chris,
spend a whole webinar on this, but we can
do an entire webinar on that. That's exactly right. So, like, going from there's more focus on delivery from more stakeholders throughout the organization. What are we hearing about forecasting and being able to see around the corner on what's going to come out? Also, like, what's shifting in the market, how we need to adjust, how we're even isolating some of those bottlenecks to retool, rebuild our teams. What are you guys seeing from your customers, stakeholders, that kind of thing?
I'll go first. So one of the things that I think a lot of people are trying to get a lens on is, are their estimates accurate? Are they focused on the right business initiatives? Is the impact that they're delivering equal to what the product team's expectations were? And then what are the current trends coming up, that they need to be aware of based on their competitors or the market or the economic, conditions, and looking at their products and their work streams as a portfolio. Are they working on the right work to meet the demand for that year? And it gets right back to what Natalia was talking about, is like, what CFO doesn't want to operate on real data? If the CFO had relied on their chieftains to come in and say, I think it's going to be on time, like, they're going to, like, get out of here. We're a publicly traded company. We need real data. Like, get out of here, clown. And so, like, what people want is, like, what's the data say? Are we going to hit our deadlines or not? Are we working on the right initiatives or not? Are we getting the return on investment? Are we not? And then one of the things that's always been kind of problematic with Agile and Scrum in general is it's always relied on opinionation of the engineer, which is fine. Most of your good engineers have a really good gut instinct. But in today's day and age of a distributed software architecture, it's really, really hard for even your best engineers to grapple with all of the dependencies, the map that's going on in production, the behind the scenes data ingestion, all these different cogs and wheels that need to happen to make software delivery come to life and be and deliver value. And so more and more, all of this data that is getting collected and funneled into a system that can be processed and then turned into insights is needed more than ever to provide this kind of ability to say, are we working on the right things? Are we hitting the right buttons? And are we going to be what we want to be at the end of the year? And I think forecasting is an incredibly important piece because it relies on data more than anything else.
I think that I was just going to say that to tee up Natalia, you have a system like Jira aligned with, like, all that deep data. And if you compare that with more of the actual software work, the pull requests and the commits and the actual deploy data, you start to weave these things together. You get really high fidelity view, like a pretty high quality view that probably wasn't available 10 years ago to anyone, that is actually just possible now.
Yeah, very true. And to add to what Chris was saying, what really resonated with me, it's about mapping value streams. And if you are being customer centric and how you think about your value, and therefore being business centric, and if you identify those risks, those bottlenecks, you may discover that the biggest risk and the biggest area for improvement in that efficiency and effectiveness is actually not purely within the software delivery domain, right? Because sometimes it is about a handoff to your customer facing teams, to your marketing teams. And when you are able to capture those moments of value streams and have that data, you may realize that what's holding you back from delivering more and faster, just like your business wants, is actually the points in value streams that are not purely software engineering driven. And I think that that's the greatest value, or one of, no pun intended, greatest values of value stream management for engineering teams, because it gives them a very obvious way to show that, hey, we are late not because we are not shipping code fast enough. There's something else that's happening in this value stream that is preventing us from going faster. And having that awareness is not possible unless you capture the work data that's happening across your organization. And that's what's so powerful about value streams, because it gives you the full picture. So I would say that forecasting about delivering value is never just about the work of the software teams. Some people wish it was, but in reality, there are many more data points that help you capture bottlenecks across the entire value stream.
Yeah, can I just jump in?
Please,
yes, please.
This is an absolutely incredible point that Natalia is making. As engineers, we're not always really good about talking about the value of the automation we put in place, or the risk that the complexity of all the different moving parts takes on. And so when you show up at your manager's, general manager's meeting and say, well, we're late by a few months, and you don't really have a good answer for it, or you're requesting funds to further automate or try to demonstrate, we'll automate 80%. Well, does that mean more value, 80% automation? What is it going to equate to? And so I feel like these tools really give the technical leader the business terminology to talk about. We can shrink time to market. We can reduce the risk. We can lower the time it takes to turn an issue around. We can improve customer satisfaction. We can make all these differences to our end users because of automation, or because we're doing this. And the reason why we're late, well, we've got a 3-week handoff to security. It's taking us forever. Maybe we should automate some of these things and then shrink it down to a day, things like that. And so it's really a kind of an imperative for development leaders to understand how to translate very technically oriented work items and initiatives into business value. And Natalia's doing a great job talking about that issue. I think it's great.
I think where we look at the forecasting across our customer base, and even just like people asking questions about how we think about it at Allstacks, it really often comes down to the lights in so many cases are not turned on in a comprehensive way, right?
Right.
It is as simple as that in so many cases. They just don't know where everything stands. They're like, right. I'm pretty smart. I'm pretty good at running my world around me. But if I don't have the lights turned on, I can't make any good decisions.
Yep.
Yeah. This year, if you speak with any general manager about the estimate of your work and forecasting and how long it's going to take you, and the first question you're going to hear is, can we go faster? And if not, why not? And you better have the data to be able to answer that question, right? Because the reality is, like you're saying, Adam, it's not often understood what exactly is blocking the team from going faster. But that will be absolutely the first question that any general manager or business owner or business leader is going to ask about software delivery these days.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think that what naturally then happens is, especially now that, as we've said a couple of times now, you have more stakeholders asking more questions to frame how things are going. They say, is there a benchmark here? Is there an expectation, right, around where we should be? Do we have an internal consistency? Or first, back to the turn the lights on thing, do we even know where we are broken?
Right.
Are the places that we are broken, do those line up to our hypothesis of where we might be broken? If we can first just like level set there, then okay, I understand some sense of internal consistency. I don't know that the waterline is good enough. And then we have folks who come to us and say, I'd really love to know, is there any way to understand, like, am I any good at this? And I would imagine, Chris, that's something that's probably rolling off the tongues of a lot of the people you're interviewing and key stakeholders, right?
It absolutely is, Adam. Actually, it's almost like the first step to admitting you have a problem is measuring where you are, right? Like any 12-step program. But anyways, yes, it's very important. Many leaders are, sometimes they're a little bit, I would say, misguided. Like, I want to benchmark myself against the other people in my industry. And it's like, you really need to benchmark yourself against yourself. Like, how fast does your business need to go? What are your initiatives that aren't getting out the door that you'd like to get out the door? Go ahead. If you don't have I tell them, if you don't have a value stream management tool, go ahead and do it manually. Do it on the back of an envelope. Try drawing out your value stream the old-fashioned way. Figure out what the wait time and the lead time is. And don't tell me that you need to wait to get a really modern tool chain before you use value stream management. You should bring that in first to tell you where all the issues are, to learn where do you need to automate, how to add the governance, and how to actually understand and instrument what's going on with your system. Almost everybody has a planning tool. Almost everybody has a version control system and a CI system and some release system. I don't care if they're disconnected. You can connect these tools in and find out what those actual metrics are, figure out where you are today, and figure out where you want to be tomorrow. We've talked to a number of stakeholders who said that, like, it didn't take much when they got their first performance data to realize where the big issues were, and able to make like cut in half kind of performance improvements on their software delivery schedule, just knowing what the performance was and where the slowdowns were. And it didn't require a lot of fancy AI ML. It was just, these are the stats, these are the numbers, go fix it. So I think benchmarking is like the first step towards really becoming, a top performer. I think it's great that people want to do this, but don't worry about what everybody else is doing. Think about yourself first and your own customers. Every customer's, every user's mileage is going to vary basically on how they use these things.
I mean, everybody saw Natalia and my heads nodding so much when you were like, put something in place so you actually know which direction to point your changes, the alterations that you think you need to make. Natalia, important point here on just like at scale, right? In the size of a lot of your customers, pretty simple, straightforward changes can be worth millions and millions of dollars, right? Like any kinds of examples that you see where people are just like, oh my gosh, like this is $20 million savings just by paying attention.
Yeah, I have a slightly spicy take on this one, actually. Yeah. I think that the biggest plague for businesses is not so much about not understanding their bottlenecks sometimes, is about not understanding what is working. So what I see a lot is people focusing on figuring out where are the gaps, where are the problems, and they're at the same time are missing out on figuring out what's working. Because if you have a distributed large team, there are surely some things that are working that you might want to replicate at scale. But a lot of the time when people attempt to look at the data, like Chris said, back of the envelope kind of style, they focus on what's not working, what do we fix? And then those fixes end up being expensive. Whereas an alternative approach, and that's again what value stream really helps you understand, is this part of our value stream is working really well. How might we replicate this? Because sometimes for large organizations, it's more viable and meaningful for them as businesses to actually build up on things that are working. So I'm seeing this over and over again, that folks are trying to focus on things that are broken, but everything is broken in a way, right? That there always rooms for improvement, and it's absolutely valuable to focus on those. But I would say that for large organizations, it's just as important, if not more important, is figuring out what is working. Because again, if you think about the speed, it might be faster for your business to double down on what is working. And that's what, again, value stream management helps you understand. So my hot take on benchmarking is understanding what's working. And then before you go and look out at what other people are doing, because we know that there's a lot of FOMO, or fear of missing out sometimes, where when people hear benchmarking, they think, oh, it's about comparing myself to those other folks in the industry. Whereas sometimes a more meaningful way of approaching benchmarking is, like Chris is saying, look internally and compare different teams or different lines of business and see who's doing well and what can we learn from that, because it's the internal learnings part that are positive learnings that is missing sometimes. And I would say that benchmarking good things and then figuring out how can you quickly adopt it may be a cheaper change that actually brings more value to your business.
I love the point. It brings me back to when I was younger in my career, a mentor and friend of mine who was really good at simplifying things, who would just say, we find a bright spot and we replicate it. We find a bright spot and we replicate it.
That's
and that is almost like an anti-pattern that sort of needs to be taught in, I think, more broadly. So awesome point there. Into theme number 4, since we were obviously ready to go like another 10 minutes on that topic too. So maybe taking it down slightly a level, this theme around more workflows, automations, sort of getting into the day-to-day, the operational flows for these teams. Chris, are you seeing a lot of investment here? Are people changing their tune around how they're approaching, the workflow that will support, the value stream efforts? How are people talking about this?
Yeah, it's actually interesting because it's all the workflow used to be more of like a project-oriented workflow, and now we're seeing more of a kind of a long-lived product workflow versus project. And what that requires is that the kind of automation you need isn't just simply the dev team, working through a backlog and going as quickly as they can and not necessarily worried about whether or not what they deliver is delivering value or not. And so in some ways, going back to the previous, the benchmarking piece and into automations, people might think, oh, my value stream management solution is only for my dev team to make sure that we're, knocking off every single work item as quickly as we can. And once we're done and it's tested, we go on to the next one and we're happy as, everything, happy as a clam. But the reality is that when you think about things more of a product, you think about funding and how does funding approve initiatives and how do initiatives get approved and how do those approved initiatives get turned into work items. And then you think about, that's when the dev team starts. Well, wait a minute, I've got a whole value stream that might need to be automated just to get that approval status going. How do I know where that's connected, from the business value perspective back to the software delivery value stream? And then you say, all right, well, wait a minute. If I have a product, it doesn't end when the software engineer tests his software. It ends when someone's using it, and it doesn't actually end because that person's got a life cycle with it, and they might have issues with it, or they might love it, and they might want to promote it. So it goes all the way out to customer satisfaction. So automation at this particular scale, and and what I mean by scale is not like, billions of users. I mean the scale across your entire enterprise and how it impacts it. It actually impacts it end to end. So if you think about your software as your product and your life stream and the connection between you and your business partners, or you and your end user customers, then you really care about the full entire automation kind of paradigm, from how does something get approved, how does it get received, and when it gets received, how does that data get back to the people who are funding it to know that we're working on the right things? So automation sort of is required to connect all those pieces together, whether it's moving data around or whether it's actually physically or logically automating certain software delivery principles. Automation is only becoming more and more a bigger part of software delivery. And the idea of DevOps being developer and operations, it's actually growing to include the whole business, right? It's kind of interesting. And so everyone tries to say, oh, well, maybe it's biz, dev, SecOps, whatever. It's just DevOps. It's everybody doing everything together, right? And
Right.
so I see automation really, being a key change, a sea change when people think about developer automation going all the way up into business and all the way out to measuring customer satisfaction, and that is in the realm of software development. That is a real big change. And so automation is needed to make all those wheels work.
It's an interesting little wrapper, this automation thing. For us with Allstacks, what we've really focused on is using the automations to actually support the risks and so risk alerts, thresholds, tolerance levels. So it really the benchmarks, the internal consistency benchmarks, and then the risk stuff we've found it's really important and satisfying to our users and buyers to know there's like a guardrail there using the
Right.
automations to then say, to flag, this thing has kind of gone out of band. I can direct my attention and more quickly act without I didn't have to do anything to receive that insight. That's an example of how we kind of tie those things together. It's amazing. I mean, in the Jira ecosystem, right, Natalia, like the level of different automations and workflow things that can hang off for all the different value streams is very wide.
It is. And I think that to Chris's point, I think that the benefactor of automation and who uses automation a lot is changing. So it is true that software development adopted automation early, naturally, because technology has a great way to benefit from it. However, as I look at Atlassian ecosystem, and if I think about even our own automation platform, there are two new trends, I would say. One is automation is not widely used just by developers. So if you look at the Atlassian marketplace and our partners that allow you to automate, and then even our own automation across Jira and across Confluence, for example, there's a lot of automation that's actually benefiting non-tech teams, and they are very eager to use it. And that goes back to our previous part of the conversation where we were saying, well, software delivery in value stream management is placed in context. And that context is the business context. It is the context of developing and delivering value for customers, which means that one of the best things that, in addition to process improvements, that automation does in the context of value stream management is improving the speed and efficiency of information flow. Because to get that value delivered to customers, you need more than just the software delivery teams. Therefore, if something important is going on, they need to know. If you speed up those information share outs through automation, you can yield a lot of value for your business that's measurable directly in dollars. And that's why I would say that, yes, software delivery and automation is growing faster than ever, to Chris's point. But also what I'm seeing is automation is becoming a huge thing for non-tech teams. Because ultimately, to deliver that value to customer, if you're a large business, you have so many different teams working across it. And then speeding up that information share out is critical. And that's what automation allows you to do for value streams.
Amazing call out on the value that can be captured for the marketing stakeholders and the product marketing people and the customer success people and the pro serve people and the sales teams, right? Like those are huge gains just on that efficiency, that like quickness of the information radiator getting out to those people, the change in course that doesn't need, this lag time that we've all been used to in the past. We've got one remaining theme for the year. It's AI ML. Chris, this is really your land in terms of like what people are actually asking for versus just interested in talking about. I can certainly touch on some of the things we're really building behind the scenes on this front, but I think we care a lot about what you think on this topic.
Yeah, so I am seeing a really strong interest from vendors who are investing in AI and machine learning, and users who've had a glimpse of what it can do. And so, first of all, when you have a system like value stream management that funnels data and normalizes it so that you know exactly that an initiative is the same as software that's running. You can make that connection and understand the data it took to get there, the cost, the resources, and its dependencies at scale. Then you can actually crunch information and create a machine learning model or do AI analysis on that data. When everything's in separate silos, it's very difficult. You can crunch each one individually, but how do you correlate it and create causality and all those kinds of things? When you crunch it all together and squish it all together and you can run a machine learning algorithm over it, then you get some very interesting insights. And I would say potential. I wouldn't say exactly what we have, but it's a lot of potential to say, how are our estimates? Are they accurate? Are they out of date? Are we working on the right initiatives? Query the system and say, where are my top bottlenecks, right? Things like that. Like the idea that the system can tell you in a more discoverable way information about how your system is moving, working, the value it's delivering, and it can pull out those complex needles in the haystack that aren't quite, visible to most people that are looking at just a big, like I remember at Microsoft, when we opened up Office 365, we were looking at these issues and we're like, oh, that's like a once in a lifetime, error. Then we started doing statistical modeling. Oh, it happens every 5 minutes. It's just that there's a terabyte of data in between every single one of them. Maybe we should take a look at that. Those are the kind of things that AI and ML can do. Data at scale, analysis at scale, and then allow humans to ask questions to give them the information and the answers that they're looking for. So that's the promise and potential of AI machine learning. I think it's going to be there soon. And we've seen a lot of really big leaps and bounds this year. I think 2023 is going to be a very interesting year for this.
We're certainly really bullish on, especially you talk about that internal consistency. So like for an org with many years of data, to be able to say like, what is the normal path that they've taken? Where are the aberrations? How do you interrogate that data and start to literally let it learn as they change process, as they move people around, right? To say, oh, yeah, you've encountered this before. You might not even know it, but you have encountered this before. And here's actually the thing that you can do that's gonna save you time, save you money.
Yep.
Yeah, and I think Jeremy Freeman in the chat made a comment about that when you're trying to improve your process sometimes, then the fixes that you're making can actually break other processes. And that's another great use case for AI and machine learning, right? Like showing you that if you're trying to change something, if you're a complex organization, and hey, here are all of the processes that will break if you're trying to do this. And so I think that's process improvements, because that's what value stream management ultimately is all about as well, right? Can greatly benefit from learning from risks and identifying those risks, especially if you have a lot of data. But even if you don't, what I'm seeing right now in the market is there are amazing new up and coming tools that allow you to get those answers and understand your risks and even forecast without having a single data point yet in, because the machine learning models are trained on other data sets that are highly relevant to all organizations. And that's what's so exciting for me. So you know how they say that software is eating the world? I feel like the AI-powered value stream management is eating value stream management, because just like Chris said, you can do it on the back of the envelope, right? And do all of those calculations. But imagine if you didn't have to forecast. Imagine if you didn't have to figure out what are the bottlenecks, and the machine learning algorithms can tell this for you. I think that's the next big leap that we're going to see in this line of thinking and value stream management as a concept.
It's really exciting. We've got enough questions hanging off on our comments, and that have already been pre-submitted by some other folks. So there's this one topic with the value stream, like it's a business backdrop, but for the value stream concepts and people, what are these layoffs from some of the big names, the big team changes in Agile, what do you guys make of that? Is it actually bullish for use some systems and data, right, to do these things? Are we losing supporters? What do you make of this? What do you think the backdrop says there?
Yeah, so like, for example, I read the press release or articles on the Capital One layoff, and, some of the things that are going on with Microsoft and other companies. I really think it comes down to people really trying to sharpen their focus on what is delivering value to our organization. We talk a lot about value. In the case of, some of these folks, it's like in Capital One's case, I actually think it would have happened regardless of the technical downturn. What they've done is they said when they started on their agile journey, they created an agile organization with a whole Scrum team and all this business. And what they said in the article was that they're shifting to having those people be part of the software engineering team. That's the shift from project to product that we're talking about. Those people are best served by being embedded in the engineering team and helping them with their day-to-day activities. And so, if you see the idea of product owner going away, the product owner was a very weak proxy for the product manager. In the new product world, Natalia lives this because her software is her product, but for an insurance company or a bank or, an oil and gas company, thinking about software as your product is a very new concept. And the idea that you'd have a product manager for software was alien to people 5 years ago in some of these industries. When you have a product manager who's calling the shots and making the decisions about what the software needs to do, it's only natural that that person might also take on the agile capabilities. Like, what are we working on? Well, how do we prioritize? Who's our customer? What's the most important thing? And this whole idea of autonomous teams, getting data. So where does VSM fit in? Well, in order for those teams to work effectively and know that they're delivering value, they need a value stream management system to help their team make sure they're working on the most top priority items. They need to know when, technical debt's getting in the way of feature flow and when feature flow is getting in the way of managing technical debt. And then now you might say, okay, great, that's great for a team. But when you can aggregate that up to team of teams, then you get a top level view of how are we doing as an organization. And so when you have the data, that data provides governance by itself as far as are we working on the right things. And so then you don't need this separate organization that's kind of like an in-between kind of team. And as folks have been talking about in some of the interesting LinkedIn posts and whatnot, an organization that has no product ownership can't possibly lead a product development effort. Has to be somebody whose butt's on the line, that's running that show. And so to me, these are all natural progressions. And again, just to reiterate, as Natalia and I were talking about, being able to demonstrate the value that your team is providing is really important. And so you should just evaluate yourself. Like, am I delivering value? I once left the job because I realized the company had no way of measuring internally the value I was delivering. And I wanted to be closer to the company. I wanted to be closer to the customer. I left digital in 1993 because they had absolutely no way of measuring what worth I had as an engineer. And I'm like, well, I don't want to be in a company that doesn't know what I'm worth. So.
Yeah, I think to add to that, yes, the question, how do you and your team add value to the business, is one of the top questions right now in the macroeconomic situation that we're in. At the same time, I want to double down on the fact that value stream management provides that common language of what is value in the organization, right? Because if a company is looking at getting more efficient, then yes, sometimes layoffs are tools that they're considering, and it's really unfortunate. But at the same time, organizations that embrace value as a concept, I think are in a better spot, because when you think about what can we do to make our business more efficient, whether it's growing the top line, whether it's making sure that you reduce costs, if you are proactive about this, and if you think about this in the context of value streams, then it's actually much easier to point out that layoffs may not be the answer, right? But it's ultimately about accountability, and it's ultimately about the shared language of what is value, because that's what's driving a lot of risks, I believe, in the current macroeconomic climate, that people don't have that shared language and concept for value. And so when, again, business leaders are thinking, what can we do to make business more efficient? They don't necessarily have an understanding of the value that certain teams provide. And value stream management provides exactly that. So I'm hoping that more and more teams can leverage it to have that joint conversation and understanding to help them be more efficient without some drastic people changes, for example.
I was going to pull us into another whole stream of comments, and questions, but we're going to come up to time. What I want to do is invite everyone to hit the link, sign up to follow along with us, follow Chris and Natalia ping the two of these smart people to, talk about all of the questions that you might have. We've got another webcast coming up. Thank you both for joining this one, the first of the year, the one I've been super excited for a long time. It's a real treat to be able to talk through this with people in your place in the world, in the business world, in the technology world. So thank you. And for those watching, we have another of these webcasts coming up at the end of the month with C Prime, a big partner of Atlassian as well. And so we'd invite you to sign up to come join that. Links are in the comments. Again, Chris, Natalia, thank you so much. Thank you everyone for watching. We'll make sure that we follow up with everybody who's asked questions. We'll do the leave behinds and all that for you. If you have anything else you'd like to say, by all means, sign off with that.
Thank you very much, Adam. It's been a pleasure to be here with you and Natalia. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, thank you for having us. This has been amazing. Appreciate it.
Appreciate it.